My name is Jason Miller. I am 28 years old, and for the last 4 years I have been running a technology company in Austin called Lone Star Systems. We build enterprise software that helps businesses organize and clean up messy data setups. It is the kind of work that makes chief technology officers and operations teams nod with relief, while everyone else's eyes drift off when I try to explain it over dinner. What started as a side project with 2 engineers and a cheap rented office grew into something much bigger than I ever expected. These days, the company is valued at roughly $50 million. I am not loud about it, and I do not live like a celebrity, but I am comfortable. Along the way, I learned something important. Money changes how people look at you, and not always in good ways. In my early 20s, I dated a few women who seemed genuinely interested in me at first. That changed once they figured out how much I made and what my company was worth. Suddenly, conversations stopped being about music, movies, or weekend plans. They turned into talks about travel, cars, fancy restaurants, and where my finances would be 10 years down the road. Even when they were pleasant, I always felt like they were quietly calculating numbers instead of getting to know me. It made me question whether they liked me or my bank account. Because of that, I got careful. I stopped advertising my success. I drove a Toyota Camry instead of something flashy. I dressed simply. No expensive watches, no loud status symbols. If someone asked what I did, I said I worked in software and left it there. I never lied, but I did not volunteer details either. It was easier to see who liked me for me when money was not front and center. About 14 months before everything fell apart, I met Lauren Mitchell at a coffee shop called Radio Coffee on South Lamar. I had been going there for a while, sitting in the same corner with my laptop, drinking cold brew while answering emails and reviewing code. Lauren usually sat across the room with textbooks and handwritten notes spread all over the table. She was studying business at the University of Texas at Austin, something I learned only after weeks of quietly noticing how seriously she took her work. One Tuesday afternoon, after a lot of accidental eye contact and small smiles, I walked over and asked if she wanted another coffee. When she looked up, I finally really saw her. She was beautiful, but in a calm, confident way. She carried herself like someone who grew up around important conversations and expected to be part of them. She smiled, said yes to the refill, then invited me to sit down. We talked for 3 hours without noticing the time. We covered Austin's rapid growth, housing prices, and how the city had changed over generations. She told me her family had deep roots in Austin, going back to her great-grandfather, who made his money in cattle long before the city turned into steel and glass. Her family still had wealth, the quiet kind that lasts through generations and comes with country clubs and unspoken expectations. From the start, I could tell Lauren was used to money. She was not rude or snobby, but she looked at the world through that lens. She did not ask me outright what I earned, but I could tell she was paying attention to details: my laptop, my watch, the way I described my job. There was a measuring look in her eyes, like she was used to sorting people into boxes based on what kind of life they could offer. I made a conscious choice not to give her the full picture. I said I worked in software and kept it vague. I did not mention owning a company or any valuations. When we went on our first real date, I picked her up in my Toyota Camry. My German luxury sedan stayed parked at home. I wanted to see who she was when she thought I was just a steady, middle-class software guy. That night, I noticed her eyes briefly flick to the car. It was quick, easy to miss, but I caught it. She smiled and said, "Nice car," in a polite tone that told me everything I needed to hear. I just laughed it off and opened the passenger door for her. We went to a decent downtown restaurant, nothing fancy, just good food at fair prices. She was easy to be around, smart, funny, and quick with her thoughts. We talked about her classes, my workday, and how Austin traffic felt like a slow-moving disaster you could never escape. Over the next few months, Lauren and I fell into a routine. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we met at Radio Coffee. Other times we grabbed dinner or stayed in and cooked at my place. She liked talking about the future, especially where she wanted to be in 5 years. Corporate strategy, maybe consulting, something that came with travel and a comfortable life. She often used phrases like financial security and stable lifestyle, and I could tell those words carried more weight for her than they did for most people. Little comments started to give me a clearer picture of how she thought. When picking restaurants, she would say things like, "There's a great place in Westlake, but it's probably pretty expensive," in a way that sounded considerate but also cautious. If I suggested splitting a pricier bill, She would smile and say she appreciated how practical I was with money. She even mentioned that most guys tried to impress her by spending more than they should. It sounded respectful on the surface, but underneath, it felt like she assumed I was carefully guarding a small budget. As time went on, she told me more about her family. Her parents, Carolyn and Thomas Mitchell, were deeply tied into old Austin social circles. Her mother spent a lot of time on charity boards and arts groups. Her father worked in investments and real estate, the kind of work that brought in serious money without much explanation. Her uncle, Richard Mitchell, was an investment banker who treated his job like a badge of honor. The family belonged to Westwood Country Club, and Lauren grew up attending fundraisers and formal events where appearances mattered as much as anything else. The first time I met her parents was at their home in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood that screamed long-established wealth. The house was large but tasteful. Stone exterior, perfect lawn, artwork that looked expensive without trying too hard. Carolyn greeted me with a warm smile and a careful hug. Thomas shook my hand, asked what I did, and nodded politely when I said I worked in software. They were kind, but distant, like they had already decided I was not permanent. Dinner felt like a polite performance. They asked about my upbringing, my family, and my job. I answered honestly, but simply. When I talked about my company, I kept it vague and avoided titles or numbers. Thomas nodded and said software was a solid field, the way someone talks about a reliable but unremarkable career. Carolyn asked about my long-term plans in a tone that suggested she was quietly evaluating whether I was a safe choice for her daughter. I met Uncle Richard at a family barbecue a few weeks later. He showed up in a tailored suit despite the heat, loosened his tie just enough to look relaxed, and worked the crowd like he owned the place. When Lauren introduced me, she said, "This is Jason. He works in software." Richard shook my hand firmly and glanced at my shoes before looking back at my face. "Software, huh?" he said. "Tough field. You have to be careful. Tech can turn fast." I smiled and said I was managing fine. He laughed, clapped my shoulder, and said it was smart to keep expectations realistic and not chase a lifestyle that did not fit my income. A few people nearby smiled along. No one said anything openly rude, but the message was clear. In their eyes, I was dating above my station. That pattern kept repeating. At family gatherings, conversations always drifted toward careers and investments. I talked about work projects. Richard jumped in with stories about big deals and smart portfolios. Every now and then he would toss out comments about how, at my stage, building a small savings was what mattered. People would laugh politely. Each time, I swallowed the urge to point out that my savings could probably buy his house outright. None of them had any idea that Lone Star Systems had already been through multiple funding rounds, that we had major clients, or that I owned a downtown penthouse I never talked about. Everything they believed about me came from what they could see on the surface. My car, my clothes, the way Lauren introduced me as someone who worked in software instead of someone who owned a company. At first, it only bothered me a little. Over time, being constantly underestimated started to sink in. I knew, logically, that my value did not depend on their opinions. Still, when an entire family quietly treats you like you are less than, it starts to affect how you feel standing in their living rooms. With Lauren, things settled into a strange, unspoken pattern. She never insulted me or said anything openly cruel. Instead, she built a story where she was the financially secure one dating a careful, practical guy. When she talked about her future, she would joke about needing to marry a rich husband, then laugh and tap my arm like it was harmless. She mentioned luxury trips, then quickly added that simpler options were fine because she knew I was careful with money. Every comment sounded kind. Everyone quietly placed me below her on an invisible ladder. After a while, I started pushing back in small ways. One day, we passed a dealership with high-end cars. She pointed at one and said it was her dream car, maybe someday. I smiled and said that if I wanted it tomorrow, I could pay cash, but I preferred investing in my business. She laughed like I was joking. Another time, at the grocery store, she looked at my worn sneakers and said she liked how I really got my money's worth. She meant it as praise. I heard it as confirmation of what she believed about me. Her graduation from the University of Texas at Austin became the focus of everything. For months, she talked about finishing school and the party her parents were planning at Westwood Country Club. Guest lists, catering, music. For her family, these events were not just celebrations. They were public reminders of their place in society. Lauren felt that pressure and enjoyed it at the same time. A week before the party, we sat on my couch eating takeout while she checked details on her phone. She told me it was going to be very fancy and said she did not want me to feel out of place. Her tone was gentle, but the meaning was clear. I smiled and said I was excited to celebrate with her. I did not mention that I had already been to Westwood multiple times for business events and charity tournaments sponsored by my own company. The night of the party, I showed up in my usual khakis and button-down shirt. Walking inside, it was obvious everything was staged. Men wore perfectly fitted suits. Women wore dresses that quietly announced their price tags. Soft lighting, a jazz group in the corner, servers carrying trays of drinks and small bites. Lauren looked stunning. She wore a sleek black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and everything about her looked polished. When she saw me, she kissed my cheek and grabbed my hand, excited to introduce me around. "This is Jason," she said again and again. "He works in software." Not that I owned a company, not that I ran anything, just that I worked in software. Relatives and family friends smiled, shook my hand, asked polite questions, then drifted back to conversations about travel, real estate, and their children's internships. I had been in rooms full of powerful people before, but never with so many who were so skilled at quietly dismissing anyone they saw no use for. After about an hour, I ended up standing near the bar with a drink, listening to one of Lauren's cousins talk about the Austin startup scene. I could hear the steady buzz of the party behind me. Glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling, the band playing smooth music that blended into the room. That was when Richard, Lauren's uncle, spotted me. He lifted his drink and waved me over, wearing that same practiced smile I had seen too many times before. "Jason, good to see you," he said, patting my shoulder. "How's the software work treating you?" "I can't complain," I said. "We stay busy." He nodded like I had just told him about a part-time job. "That's the attitude. Keep pushing. Maybe one day you'll move up into management." A couple of his friends laughed softly, like it was a harmless joke. I took a sip of my drink and let it go. I knew exactly how much I could say, and I also knew it would not matter. He had already decided who I was. Richard kept talking, enjoying the attention. He raised his glass and said how tough the economy was for young people and how important it was to keep expectations realistic. No pretending you belonged in a league you could not afford. The words landed heavy. It was not just about me. It was about the world he believed in, where people like him started on top and everyone else had to earn permission to exist nearby. Around 10 o'clock, the mood shifted. People had been drinking for hours, and the room felt looser, louder. Lauren was one of them. I saw her walking toward me with purpose, cheeks flushed, eyes bright in a way that made my stomach tighten. I was at the bar talking to one of her cousins when she stopped in front of me. "Jason," she said loudly, "we need to talk." The tone was wrong. Conversations nearby slowed. A few people turned their heads. I set my drink down and faced her, already feeling the attention settle in. "I've been thinking about us," she said. "About our future. About what I want my life to look like." She paused, and more people went quiet. "I just don't think this works anymore. We're in different financial places. We want different lifestyles." She looked around, then back at me. "I need someone who can match my ambition. Someone who can give me the life I expect. You're a good man, but you're not in my financial league. You're not husband material for someone like me." A few gasps floated through the crowd. Others edged closer, pretending not to listen. The embarrassment was precise and public. She was not just breaking up with me. She was explaining why. She added a small laugh and made a comment about me affording dinner without her family's help. A couple of cousins laughed awkwardly. They knew it was wrong, but the moment pulled them along. That's when Richard stepped in, drawn by the attention. He put his hand on my shoulder like a concerned mentor. "Don't take it too hard," he said. "She has standards, family expectations. I'm sure you'll find someone better suited to your situation. Maybe in a few years, when your career is more established, you can try dating at this level again." Everyone watched me closely, waiting for a reaction. Anger, shame, a scene. Instead, something settled inside me, clear and calm. These people had spent over a year deciding I was not enough, and now they felt proven right. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and stepped a few feet away. Lauren frowned, confused by the pause. I dialed a number I knew by memory. "Tyrone," I said when he answered. "I need a pickup at Westwood Country Club. 30 minutes. Tyrone Lewis had been my friend since college. These days, he flew for my company when we needed to move fast for clients or executives. He did not ask questions. He just said, "On my way," and hung up. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and turned toward the group again. Their faces showed confusion mixed with quiet satisfaction. I looked at Lauren, then at Richard, then at the relatives who had watched my breakup like it was part of the entertainment. "I appreciate the advice about knowing my place," I said evenly. "Thanks for clearing things up." Then I walked to the bar, ordered a whiskey, and focused on the sound of ice hitting the glass until my breathing slowed. The next 28 minutes felt longer than any board meeting I had ever sat through. I stayed near the bar, making small talk when necessary, fully aware that most of the room was keeping track of me. Lauren tried to come over twice, maybe to smooth things out or explain herself. I turned away both times. There was nothing left to fix. Then I felt it. A low vibration under the music. At first, it was easy to miss. Then it grew louder, steady, and unmistakable. Helicopter rotors. People stopped talking. Heads turned toward the windows facing the open field next to the club. The helicopter came into view, sleek and controlled as it descended. The name on the side was impossible to miss. Lone Star Systems. My company's name, lit by the field lights. The room went dead quiet. Phones came out. People crowded the windows, trying to understand what they were seeing. I finished my drink, placed a $20 bill on the bar, and headed for the exit without looking back. Behind me, Lauren's voice broke through the silence. "Jason, wait." I kept walking. Outside, the wind from the rotors hit my chest as the pilot door opened. Tyrone leaned out, headset on. "You good?" he yelled. I nodded and climbed in, buckling up calmly. As we lifted off, I glanced back through the club's windows. Faces were pressed to the glass. Screens glowed in their hands. I knew exactly what they were searching. Lauren burst out the doors just as we rose, her dress whipping in the wind. She ran a few steps, calling my name, until security stopped her. Then she was just another figure on the ground as the city lights swallowed everything below. The next morning, Tyrone texted me while I was drinking my first coffee. His girlfriend, Monica, had worked the event. According to her, the moment the helicopter left, the party collapsed. People started searching Lone Star Systems immediately. Articles came up, funding announcements, interviews, my profile in the Austin business rankings. The mood flipped from smug to mortified in minutes. Lauren, according to Monica, completely broke down. She tried to chase the helicopter, realized she could not, and spent nearly an hour crying in the bathroom while her family tried to calm her. Her mother was horrified when she realized they had publicly insulted a man worth millions at their own celebration. By then, I was already home, calm, and done with all of it. Thomas stood off in a corner with his phone in his hand the whole time, reading everything he could find about Lone Star Systems. I could picture him doing quiet math, realizing exactly how much money they had just talked down to. Richard's reaction was the one that made me laugh when Tyrone told me about it later. Tyrone said Richard had been retelling the breakup like he was proud of it, acting like he was the brave uncle who put that gold digger in her place. That version of the story did not last long. A few people at the party were local business owners and investors. The second they saw my company name on that helicopter, they knew who I was. Word spread fast that Richard had just mocked one of Austin's more successful young entrepreneurs in front of a room full of people. And it did not stay inside the country club. Somebody filmed me walking out. The video caught Lauren loudly saying I was not in her league, then the company logo coming into view, then me calmly heading to the aircraft while she yelled my name behind me. That clip hit social media the same night. By the next afternoon, the phrase helicopter breakup was trending locally. People reposted it with captions about karma, not judging by appearances, and how dangerous it is to talk down to someone you do not really know. Local news stations ran it as a feel-good story. Quiet confidence versus loud arrogance. Business forums shared it as an example of patience and self-control. Some people even treated it like a modern lesson about money and character. None of that had been my plan. I did not call Tyrone to show off. I called because I wanted to leave with my dignity and keep control of my own story. The spectacle happened on its own, without my help. That weekend my phone would not stop. Lauren called, texted, and left voicemails that got more frantic each time. At first she sounded confused. She kept saying we needed to talk, and she did not know, and I should have told her. Then she turned apologetic. She blamed the alcohol, said she did not mean it, said we could fix it, and that everything was different now. After that, she got desperate. She said I could not walk away over one mistake. She said she loved me. She begged me to call back. Her main defense was always the same. She did not know. That was the point, though. Her behavior when she believed I had nothing told me more than any apology ever could. The money did not change who I was. It only changed how she looked at me. That difference mattered more than anything she said afterward. I listened to a few messages, then I stopped opening them. Richard tried his own damage control next. He called with the voice of a man pretending nothing happened. In his voicemail, he said we got off on the wrong foot, there did not need to be tension, and he thought there might be business opportunities we could explore together. The shift from patronizing uncle to eager networker was almost funny. He did not mention the party, his comments, or using me as a punchline. He went straight to trying to benefit from me. Then Carolyn sent flowers to my office with a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. She wrote that their family regretted any hurt from Lauren's celebration, that emotions were high, and that the words did not reflect how much they admired my work ethic and character. She said they would love to have me over for dinner to properly welcome me into their circle. That phrase made my jaw tighten. For over a year, I had been treated like I was standing outside that circle, waiting for someone to decide if I was worth letting in. Now that they knew my net worth, suddenly the gate was open. Lauren went all in trying to get me back. She showed up at my office building more than once, waiting in the lobby with coffee and outfits that looked carefully planned. My assistant, Brittany, had to call security twice when Lauren refused to leave after being told I was unavailable. After that, I told Brittany to let building security know Lauren was not allowed upstairs. The next time Lauren came, she raised her voice in the lobby. She accused me of hiding my success and making her look stupid. She said I lied by omission. She said I set her up to humiliate herself. And then she said the line that told me everything I needed to know. How was I supposed to know you were successful? She snapped. You drove a Toyota. Right there, I understood the real problem for her. She was not crushed because she hurt me. She was crushed because she felt embarrassed. In her mind, the mistake was not judging a man as unworthy because of money. The mistake was doing it to the wrong man. And if I had been exactly as middle class as she assumed, I think she would have slept just fine that night. The helicopter in that video was what stuck in Lauren's head, not the way she treated me. That's what bothered her the most. Meanwhile, her family went into full rescue mode like they could undo it with enough phone calls and nice words. Thomas called me several times. When I did not answer, he left voicemails. He talked about wanting to connect and discuss possible investment opportunities tied to Lone Star Systems. He laid it on thick, saying he respected entrepreneurs and that he was impressed by what I had built. Like he had been impressed all along, instead of acting like I was just some ordinary guy tagging along behind his daughter. Carolyn sent another note too. Same tone as before. Family misunderstandings. Second chances. She wrote like everything had gotten out of hand by accident, like it was all just an unfortunate mix-up. And Richard tried his own approach. He suggested we get lunch at some expensive downtown place to talk about mutual business interests, like we had always been equals. Like he had not spent a year treating me like a charity case who should be grateful to be standing near their table. The pressure did not stop with the family. Lauren started contacting every mutual friend we had. She told them she loved me and that the party was a misunderstanding. She acted like it was just bad timing and hurt feelings, not a calculated public teardown. Friends reacted all kinds of ways. Some texted me saying they understood both sides and thought I should at least hear her out. Others flat out told me they were on my side, and what she did was unforgivable. I did not argue with anybody. I just listened, and I kept moving. Lauren also started posting old pictures of us on social media. Photos from coffee shops, dinners, random weekends. She put captions on them about love, humility, pushing past pride, and working through challenges. She tried to rewrite the whole thing as a story about miscommunication, not a story about her standing in front of her family and deciding, loudly, that I was not worth her time because she thought I did not have money. A few weeks later, I got a moment that told me more than any voicemail ever could. I was eating dinner downtown with a coworker, Ethan Brooks, when I noticed Lauren sitting across the room at another table. She was with a man who was clearly working overtime to impress her. He wore an expensive watch and kept adjusting his wrist so it would catch the light. He talked too loud. The tables around him could hear pieces of his speech about his investment portfolio, the deals he had closed, the connections he had. He sprinkled local business names into the conversation like he was reading from a list he memorized on the drive over. Lauren looked bored out of her mind. Her posture was perfect. Her smile was polite. But her eyes were flat, like she was somewhere else. Then she saw me. She excused herself and walked right over to my table like nothing had happened, like she had not tried to destroy me in public. She leaned in and spoke low. "That guy is a complete loser," she said, flicking her eyes back toward him. "All he talks about is money and status. I miss being with someone real, someone with substance." I just stared at her for a second and let the words sit there. "Someone real?" I said quietly. "You ended things with me in front of your whole family because you thought I did not have enough money." She shook her head fast, like she could erase it by denying it. She blamed the alcohol. She blamed the graduation stress. She blamed her parents. She blamed everything except herself. "I was drunk," she said. "I was overwhelmed. Graduation, expectations, all of it. You know that is not who I am." Then she started talking like she was giving a speech. She said I taught her what mattered. She said success was character, not showing off. She said that was why she fell in love with me in the first place. She said we could fix it. She said we could reshape how people saw the story. That was the part that got me. Lauren still did not get it. To her, the problem was the helicopter, the video, the gossip, the way she looked afterward. But the real story was what she chose to do when she believed I had nothing to offer except myself. She had built her own version of me in her head. A hardworking, modest man who needed her family's connections. A guy she could feel generous dating, because in her mind she was reaching down a rung on the ladder. That version of me fit neatly inside her world. And she never really noticed the real man sitting across from her all those nights, watching, listening, and learning exactly how she measured people. Life kept moving, whether she liked it or not. Lone Star Systems kept growing. We finished the steps to take the company public. A few months later, the valuation landed a little over $200 million. I ended up on Forbes 30 Under 30 for enterprise software innovation. It felt strange seeing my name in that kind of spotlight, but I had earned it. What was funny is that my day-to-day life did not change much. I still lived the way I lived. The big difference was the outside world. People suddenly treated me like I mattered. Like I belonged in rooms where, before, they would have looked right through me. Somewhere along the way, I met someone new. Her name was Ashley Reynolds. She was an attorney who built her own practice from nothing. No shortcuts. No family pipeline. Just long days, smart choices, and grit. She was sharp and direct, and her sense of humor could cut through fake talk in about 2 seconds. Ashley actually knew about Lone Star Systems before she knew me personally. But the first time we talked at a networking event, she treated me like any other guy standing there. She asked real questions about company culture and leadership. She did not care about valuation. When she found out I was the founder, she just nodded once and asked what kind of work kept my team up at night. Then she told me what kept her firm up at night, like that was the normal exchange between two working adults. When I eventually told Ashley the whole story about Lauren, the party, and the helicopter, she listened without cutting me off. She did not rush to defend anybody. She just let me talk. She did not gasp when I got to the helicopter part. She did not crack jokes about revenge or act like it was some big win. She just sat there and listened until I was finished. Then she said, "Thank God you learned who she really was before you married her." No drama. No heat. Just calm certainty. That was the thing about Ashley. She did not need my money. She did not want to be carried by it. She wanted to build a life beside someone, not climb into a life that was already built and polished like a showroom. Being with Ashley felt like stepping into a different kind of relationship. When my company had a strong quarter, she was happy for the right reasons. She understood what it meant for the people whose paychecks depended on us. She cared about stability, jobs, and the fact that I was building something that supported real families. She did not look at it like a scoreboard for my bank balance. And when she won a hard case, I listened while she walked me through it. Every detail, every decision, every strategic move she made. I celebrated with her, not because it sounded impressive, but because I knew how much work it took. We spent more time laughing about small, dumb things than talking about investments. It was not that money did not matter at all. It was that money was not the main character in our story. The whole helicopter breakup mess never fully went away in Austin. It stayed in the air like smoke you could not clear out, because the city loves a story, and that one had everything: status, ego, and a public reversal. Lauren's social life changed fast. That video made her known for all the wrong reasons. Wealthy men avoided her because they had watched the clip and did not want to be the next guy she judged out loud. Other men hesitated because they knew, even if she promised she had changed, they would always be measured against the millionaire she tossed aside. Her name turned into something people whispered at parties when the topic shifted to judging folks too quickly. Work got harder for her too. She had job interviews that seemed promising, then suddenly went cold at the end. I did not have to guess why. Employers Google names. And once they saw the video and the articles, they had questions. Austin's business world is tighter than most people realize. Reputation matters. Hiring managers started wondering if they wanted someone on their team whose most public story was humiliating a partner over money in front of a room full of witnesses. Doors that used to swing open because of her family name started staying shut. Her family took hits as well. Richard lost a few business relationships once people heard what he said at that party. Some potential clients decided they did not want to work with a man who mocked successful entrepreneurs in social settings. Thomas and Carolyn scrambled to patch things up. They hosted dinners, made extra donations, and worked their connections like they were trying to plaster over a crack in the wall. They kept calling it a misunderstanding, a youthful mistake, a bad night. But people remembered. Months later, I spoke at Austin Startup Week. The topic was building a sustainable company culture and leading with integrity. The room was packed with founders, investors, and young professionals looking for a way into the world I lived in. I talked about humility. I talked about listening more than you speak. I talked about creating something that still feels like yours even after it grows bigger than you expected. I never said Lauren's name. I never said her family's name. But I did say something that came straight from that night. I told the crowd to pay attention to how people treat you when they think you have nothing they need. That is when you learn who they really are. When I stepped off the stage, I could still hear the applause fading behind me. That's when I saw Lauren near the back. She stood by a banner holding a notepad, looking thinner and more fragile than I remembered. Our eyes met for a brief second, and she started moving forward, weaving through groups of people. Before she reached me, security stepped in. My assistant had already briefed them. They did not cause a scene. No shouting, no grabbing, just a quiet, firm redirect that kept her on the other side of a line she could not cross anymore. I walked out of the venue with Ashley beside me, the evening air cool in my lungs. On the way to the car, the whole timeline ran through my head like a single long reel. The first conversation at Radio Coffee. The months of being sized up. The party at Westwood. The rotors cutting through the music. The faces pressed to the windows. And now this speech, this moment, this calmer life. And I realized I was grateful. Not because any of it felt good at the time. It did not. But because those moments burned off the fog. They stripped away the guesswork. They showed me exactly who Lauren and her family were when they believed I had nothing to offer except myself. That helicopter did not prove I deserved a place in their circle. It proved their circle was never worthy of mine. I built something real. Not just a company, but a life and a sense of what kind of man I wanted to be. I learned what kind of person I wanted beside me. Money changed how they treated me, but it never changed the truth I walked away with. I did not need to fit into their league. I already had my own.